Hello, welcome, thanks for joining. I'm Hashem, you're watching another Pushing Film live stream. If you are here live, I can see there's a few people who are waiting. Let me know if you can hear me alright, just to make sure that the audio is working fine. And then we'll get into things. So I still haven't decided if this little spontaneous live stream is going to be one of the type that I leave online or not. As long as it's pretty short, I'm going to try and keep it short, which is difficult when it comes to streaming. Then I'll probably leave it on so that anyone who doesn't catch this, because it's a little bit of a different time, especially if you're in the US, you can watch this afterwards. All I wanted to do is give a little bit of an update, catch up with you guys, because as some of you might know, I had a little bit of a medical issue and I had to kind of take a little bit of time off from producing videos and whatnot. But just checking the comments already and I can see the audio is good, and I've got Hamish and Sean. Thanks for joining, guys. Hope you well. Yeah, thank you. So, Through the Lens by Emilio Zogo, morning from the UK. Yeah, so it's early morning in the UK, isn't it? About 8:30 or something, if I'm right. And I've got Ryan Park from Sydney. Yeah, so thanks for joining, guys. I appreciate the support as usual. And just to give an update, kind of alluded to it a little bit in the title of this live stream and video, which is sometimes life just happens. And yeah, to kind of elaborate on that, I had to recently go to the hospital for a surgery, which was an appendix removal, appendectomy, which was just something that just came out of nowhere, which affected me last week. So started to get this stomach ache early last week that wouldn't go away, got worse the next day and then worse again. And then I kind of saw the doctor and he said, you know, like we might need to do some scans. Looks like it's on the right side of the stomach, could be a gallbladder thing or whatever. Booked in for a scan the next day. But he said if it gets worse, you might need to just go to the emergency room. So, and that's what happened, unfortunately. It got worse that night and it started to localize down to the bottom right, which straight away rang the alarm bell because that's where the appendix lies. And I was like, oh, well, shit, that's no good. I better go in just so it doesn't get even worse from that. And yeah, they told me it looks like your appendix is inflamed. It's not as bad as it is for some people. A lot of people get it younger in their life, like in their teenage years or early 20s. And I'm into my 30s, so it was a bit unusual. But they said it happens. And sometimes it's not so acute and extreme. It can come on over a few days or weeks even. And what we advise is just we get in there with the camera, the little keyhole surgery thing, and then we might as well remove it. And I'm like, well, all right. It's had a little think about it and just concluded that all right, let's go ahead with the surgery. So they admitted me, stayed overnight, and then the next day I had the procedure. But yeah, it was like a fairly, I don't know what to call it, but it was like a keyhole laparoscopic type surgery. So it's not as, extreme and it doesn't take as long of a recovery time as a full open surgery. So yeah, luckily for me, I've been mostly just resting for a week. I checked out of hospital the day after the surgery, came home on Friday, so 1 week ago today. And today is the first day I'm really starting to feel pretty much like myself again. There's just a bit of swelling and, I have to take the dressings off soon, but it's a pretty good recovery, I'd say, amongst surgeries. And yeah, I didn't put out any like videos or anything. I did a little bit of an Instagram live with a fellow YouTuber from Japan, Alex on Streets, if anyone's familiar. And yeah, it kind of just threw a bit of a spanner in the works, or whatever the saying is. I don't know what it is. But it's just kind of a reminder that sometimes life happens out of nowhere. Like in my case, that was something really unexpected. I'm someone who tries to stay fairly healthy and whatnot, exercising and eating fairly well, but then this sort of thing is unexpected. And I've seen it happen to a lot of other people. And another thing to kind of highlight that, if you're in Melbourne, we had an earthquake, which is rare here. I mean, minor ones do happen. Most people don't even feel them, but we had like somewhat of a medium level. I think it was magnitude 5.8 or 6, according to a few different seismologists or whatever. But it was just kind of, again, something to kind of highlight that unpredictability of life sometimes, that stuff happens out of nowhere. You can never predict certain things. And it's just a reminder for me to kind of expect the unexpected, of course, but then to remind, I felt really grateful for what happened to me, besides like the fact, obviously I had to go to surgery. Not pleasant if you can avoid it, but I was glad it wasn't something worse. At first I thought, he said it's a gallbladder stone or something, and that to me seems like it would have been worse. And in terms of like the earthquake, it wasn't anything like what countries that get earthquakes regularly would experience. It wasn't as destructive. There was one building that I know of that kind of had some damage, but luckily no one was, in the path of the damage. No one was hurt. I'm not sure if anything else developed since then. But, somewhere like Japan or New Zealand or countries that are over those plates that get a lot of earthquake activity would look at that and say, well, that's nothing. But it's all kind of relative, isn't it? And yeah, someone in the comments, I got Trung saying the 9:15 earthquake, I slept through it. So that it was a morning earthquake. It just kind of woke a lot of people up, apparently. I was already awake for an hour or so. So the house just started shaking. Things were rattling around the walls. Luckily, nothing on the shelves here fell off. There was a mirror in the house that had slipped down, and the TV was wobbling about, but I kind of went and held that. But yeah, if you were in Melbourne, how did that surprise you? Because we don't get them often here. And I'm just catching up on a bit of the comments. Did you take home the appendix in a jar? No, I think they send it off for analysis or something, unfortunately. That's pretty gross though, man. I don't know why you'd want to do that. No, I understand. It was a joke though. Glad to hear that you're well and getting back on your feet. Yes, thanks, John. It has been a fairly good recovery. I've been mostly just like lying in bed, catching up on movies and photo books. I got to go through some photo books that I'd purchased but never had the time to sit and properly go through. So that was good. And yeah, from a couple of days ago, I felt like myself again. I was able to drive and walk around. I just can't do any heavy lifting for 6 weeks and can't really strain or do anything too strenuous. But it's otherwise not too bad. And Sean was making morning coffee. Of course you were. You're always making coffee, man. With your 10 coffee machines. Kids were in bed until they heard the yelling, right? Damon. House as old as dirt, so I was a bit worried there'll be damage. Yeah. I think that's something, if a building is structurally weak, it was more prone to having cracks and the damage like the one in Chapel Street where the whole brickwork came down off the roof. Pretty extreme. And Benjamin Neo asking me if I can feel something is missing or not really. No, I feel the same, man. It's such a minor, what do they call it, a vestigial organ. It's a bit of a mystery still to some doctors and scientists as to why it's still there and why it becomes inflamed, and there's multiple kind of reasons they kind of attribute it to, but I couldn't really pinpoint anything, so it just is what it is. And yeah, moving on. So I didn't get to produce any of the content that I had in mind. I wanted to do a particular kind of topic-driven live stream and or video during this like couple of weeks since then, but I might sort of take it easy and just put out some content like this and something else I'm going to talk about soon, which is a lot easier to make. So just kind of live streams, and I'm going to have a video chat that I'll be putting up tomorrow morning. And yeah, just kind of still staying in touch, and then maybe slowly working towards other things that I fell behind on. One of which was, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can there, just in the background, I've got some zines and a couple of prints that people ordered, and I had a couple of them come through on the day that I got admitted, so I had to, message them and say, hey, sorry, I need some extra time to get to those orders, and everyone was, completely understanding, so I appreciate that. And yeah, I also appreciate anyone who has ordered copies of the zine since then and the prints, and I'm just really grateful for that amount of support that I've been, seeing from you guys, because yeah, I wouldn't have ever expected it when I started putting things on my web store, especially when it came to prints. And yeah, people seem to be liking the night prints, night photography. It's something I don't do much, but when I do it, I enjoy it and I get feedback, and people seem to like those when it comes to prints at least. So I might add a couple more night shots to the print store. But just checking another chat comment here. Tony Hayes. I was at work with a Rottweiler. I thought it was the dog thrashing around. I'm a vet by trade, yeah. Yeah, it's funny, right? Because our mind just goes to the simplest solution. What's it called? Heuristics, and you kind of assume, like Sarah thought it was just something, normal, or someone would have thought it was, like, I've heard a few stories now, I can't remember any of them, but things like maybe there was a truck starting up next door, because we don't get them often. We're just not used to knowing how to kind of assume straight away an earthquake. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining, man. No heavy lifting. Well, there goes the Pentax 6.7. Yeah, no, I can still carry that. They told me not to carry anything heavier than a tea kettle, and I'm like, well, that's not much, but that's still a couple of kilos. So, and to be honest, I think it kind of depends on your own kind of condition and strength and whatever. So obviously I won't be doing any heavy like gym lifting kind of thing for weeks at least, but I might sort of ease myself back into kind of like waking my body back up, because it just feels weird after you've been under general anesthetic and getting your strength back, even with things like, just bending down to the sink to wash your hands or face or whatever, and then walking around initially felt weird, but it comes back slowly. So, Joie Duck. Been meaning to do some night photography in the area, but man, I've been so lazy on it lately. Yeah, it is tough, especially with all these restrictions and even the lack of activity. If you had a way of going out and just sort of shooting freely at nighttime, it's tricky. But yeah, that was really it that I wanted to update you all with in terms of, a personal update. So that's what's been happening. Content's going to be a little bit slower. I am going to upload this in conversation video. So I had a conversation with Lucy Lumen, from the YouTube channel Lucy Lumen's Analog Adventures, and I'll be putting that up tomorrow morning. So that will be early tomorrow morning if you're here in Australia. Whereas if you're in the UK, what will it be? Sort of the evening. And then if you're in the US, it will be kind of afternoon, I'm guessing. It's all over the place when it comes to time zones. But yeah, expect that in the next 24 hours. That was a great chat. I'd had some smaller conversations with her through Instagram beforehand, and we had this chat lined up for a while. So I'll upload that tomorrow. And I will be doing another couple of in-conversation style videos coming up with some other YouTube creators from overseas, for example. And I'm really looking forward to that, because again, it is something easier to do while I'm still sort of recovering. It's hard to kind of go out and shoot too much B-roll. Not that I could while we're in lockdown anyway. And Paul D. My motivation to go take photos at the moment is basically zero. Need Sydney lockdown to end. Totally not inspired to shoot more film in my local area. Yeah, it is a bit like that, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's not long now, and I feel exactly what you mean. And Phantomized asking, what suggestions do you have for night photography locations in Melbourne? I would say the city is one of my favorites of CBD, because there are a lot of lights. You need a little bit of sort of artificial lighting generally, unless you're just doing all long exposures. But even then, you don't have a photograph without light. And at nighttime, that's what you're going to look for, even if it's an isolated bit of light from a building or from the moon or stars, star trails, for example. But yeah, my mind goes to doing things like the city or local shopping areas if you're in the suburbs. You can always go and shoot houses if you're up for doing that, with their their lights on, or even without. You can use the natural moonlight if there is any. So yeah, my first choice would be the city. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring it all back to what I was saying before in terms of just having felt like a certain level of gratitude, because if you're not aware of the medical system here in Australia, there's a lot of, especially if you're in a lockdown city like Melbourne or Sydney, kind of that sense of dissatisfaction with what's going on. And it's all justified in its own way, and that disillusionment with the government and everything. But, after going to hospital and having what we call the Medicare system here, and I can, go into the hospital, get this major surgery done, and I paid nothing. It's completely covered. That's the beauty of our health system here, is we have a really good, if you look at the grand scheme of things, we have a great government and system in Australia, especially when you're looking at it relative to other places. And that's something that if you live somewhere else, you might not have been able to afford. For example, I wouldn't have been able to afford it. My normal health insurance doesn't even cover that, which is weird. It's like a low level plan. But Medicare, I didn't pay anything, not even for the doctor's follow-up, nothing for the drugs they gave me while in the hospital. And that could have been $10,000, $20,000. Maybe if you're in the US, you can kind of sympathize because I think it's different there, if I'm correct. And, you know, even with all this lockdown, even though I've lost work, for example, we have this great government support system here that they're calling it the COVID disaster payment scheme. If you've lost a certain amount of work, we get regular payments until the lockdown ends. The vaccination is free. There's a lot of things that are kind of put on a plate for us. So it's easy to kind of lose a sense of gratitude for what we do have until maybe something like that happens to you. And mainly just concern ourselves with what is being missed out on because of things like lockdowns or whatever it is. So I just feel really grateful because of what we have here. I've got a roof over my head. I've got, you know, a beautiful partner and she's supportive, someone to look after me, and like, you know, some support from the government, whether it's because of losing work or, you know, the health cover we get, and a number of things I could go on about. So, you know, I hope some of that might kind of resonate with some of you guys, whether you live in Australia or not, and tie back into that kind of topic that, you know, sometimes life life does just happen without any level of warning or expectation. And yeah, it's important to have a certain level of gratitude for what you do have, and to kind of have empathy for other people who might have something differently or see things a different way. There's a lot of division going on right now, and you know, it'll all get better soon. You know, especially, you know, if you're here in Melbourne or Sydney, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But yeah, not long now. All right, so I think I'll just read a few more comments and end the stream there. Maybe touch on a couple of other things, but yeah, just a big fan of South Bank. Yeah, that's a good place near the CBD to go shoot when it's not locked down, of course. Krishna Priyaka, glad to see you recovering well. Thank you. And Sean, totally agree with what you're saying. It definitely could be a lot worse. Melbourne with the situation. Have to be grateful for what you have. Yeah, exactly. And oh, Garth, hey man, how's it going? Actually got you live. You did. I think you actually managed to pop into a live stream once before too, but I know it's not a common appearance. Yeah, it's that dad life, right? So yeah, thanks again, guys. If you are interested in the zine that I mentioned, I still have copies. The link is in the description below. Again, if you did order, there's a bit of a delay, but I'll be shipping out the next bunch tomorrow. In other things, there's the chat coming out, and also the camera that I shot the zine on, which was this Canonet QL17. I reviewed it on the channel 2 or 3 years ago when I first picked it up at an op shop. I used this camera over the 3 or 4 years that I shot the zine on. I think it's about 3 or 4 years, not 2 or 3. But yeah, one of my intentions from the beginning was to finish the project and do something with this camera in terms of a giveaway. So I'm going to be giving this camera away. I guess I've said it now, the decision's been made, to a viewer in Australia because of shipping, but that's going to come soon. I still need to figure out the logistics of how I'm going to run that. It'll probably be something that's through here on YouTube and Instagram. I've got more information about that, a little bit of a surprise that I'll save in regards to that, but I'll be giving this Canonet QL17 away, the same one that I shot my sun-dried strip zine on, and just passing it forward to someone who will make good use out of it, because since buying that, I ended up getting the Leica M4 and changed that to the MA, and I thought that would just be a nice thing to pass this, pay it forward to someone else here in Melbourne, ideally, or Sydney, or anywhere in Australia, just to kind of keep postage reasonable, because shipping something internationally is a bit crazy from here. But yeah, that's something I had intended from the beginning. So if you're interested in that and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel or tell your friends about it. Follow me on the Pushing Film Instagram page, and I'll release information about that giveaway in the coming month or so. I need a bit of time to kind of finalize some details on it, because there's going to be more to it. Again, a bit of a surprise. But yeah, that's the news I wanted to end on. Thanks again for all the support and all the well wishes that I'm seeing here in the comments from Sean and everyone else. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I hope you've all been well, and check out that live chat tomorrow. It's going to be kind of a podcast style one that you can even just listen to while you're doing, you know, your regular stuff or driving or whatever. So yeah, subscribe and you'll get notifications, and I'll chat to you next time. All right, guys, have a good one.